All right, so we're diving into this research you sent over about how China is developing its own way of thinking about international relations theory.
It's really interesting stuff.
It is.
Wow.
It is. And we have a whole mix of excerpts from like academic papers, book chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Some are about the history of IR theory in China, and then others are focusing on this concept called the Tianxia System.
Yeah, the Tianxia System, which is...
which we'll definitely get to.
Get to, yeah.
Yeah.
Our mission today, I think, is to like help you understand how Chinese scholars are viewing the world.
Yeah, how they see things.
And where they're finding inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert. It's not just Marx.
No, not just Marx. There's a lot more going on.
There's a lot more going on.
A lot more to unpack.
Yeah. One thing that really stood out to me right away was this concept of like theory with a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just about explaining the world.
Right.
It's about like actively shaping it. Yeah, it's very much a I guess in the West we think of theory as a way to understand, maybe predict.
Yeah.
But in China, there's this deep pragmatism that's influenced by their history, by this emphasis on what they call socialist construction, which basically means actually building a socialist society.
Right.
Theory has to be applicable.
Yeah.
It has to have real-world implications.
So it's not just like an academic exercise.
It's a blueprint.
The blueprint for action.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that really shapes how IR theory is being developed in China.
So speaking of development,
Okay.
the research kind of outlines these stages of how IR theory has evolved in China.
Right.
So from the 1950s to the 70s, it was really focused on interpreting Marxist-Leninist thought.
Okay.
Especially when it came to national security and this clash between capitalism and communism.
Right. Well, at that time, China was relatively isolated.
Yeah.
So their focus was naturally inward on internal development and, protecting themselves.
Right. But then things shift dramatically in the 1980s.
I do.
With Deng Xiaoping's reforms and China opening up to the world.
Yes.
And then we see this sudden engagement with Western IR theories.
Yes. So you can almost think of it like a crash course.
Yeah.
They were translating texts, introducing new concepts, but not always really critically analyzing or adapting them to the Chinese context.
It's not until the 90s. And beyond that, we start seeing really independent Chinese IR theories emerge. And this is when scholars are really grappling with the post-Cold War world and China's own rising global role.
Exactly. And that's when you start to see this debate about Chinese characteristics really come into play.
Okay, so tell me about this debate over Chinese characteristics.
So big debate within the Chinese IR community about whether their theories should have these distinct Chinese characteristics.
Okay.
This phrase, you see it everywhere in these papers.
Okay.
It was popularized by Deng Xiaoping himself.
Right.
And it's loaded, it's very politically and ideologically charged.
Yeah.
It gets at this idea of, a distinctly Chinese path to modernization.
Right.
And in IR theory, it suggests this need for theories rooted in China's unique history and culture.
So the research highlights this interesting generational divide.
It does, yeah.
You have these older scholars who were trained, in the pre-reform era, and they seem to be more supportive of this.
Yeah, they do, which makes sense if you think about their background.
Yeah.
They came of age at a time when China was defining itself in opposition to the West, forging its own path.
Yeah.
And they see a lot of value in highlighting what makes China unique.
Right, but then you have these younger scholars, many of whom have studied abroad.
Yeah, they've had international experience.
Oh, they seem to be...
Yeah, a little bit more skeptical.
More skeptical, yeah. Why is that?
They argue that, good IR theory should really be aiming for universality.
Yeah.
Not cultural specificity.
It's like that classic universalism versus particularism.
Exactly. Are we searching for these overarching theories that apply to all states?
Yeah.
Or do we acknowledge that different cultures might just fundamentally see international relations in different ways?
And there was this one younger scholar, Wang Yizhu,
yes,
and he argued that it's premature to even be talking about Chinese characteristics.
Too early, he says.
Too early.
Yeah.
He even says, and I'm quoting him here,
okay,
we must first be able to use Western theory to explain China's own behavior before we can use Chinese theory to explain the world.
So basically, learn the rules of the game.
Yeah, learn the rules.
Before you try to change them.
Before you can...
He's advocating for a much more measured, gradual approach.
Understand how things work first.
Exactly.
Okay, so if some scholars are looking to develop these Chinese characteristics, where are they finding inspiration?
Well, they're looking to their own history.
Okay.
China has this incredibly rich philosophical history.
Yeah.
And the research points to 3 major schools of thought.
Okay.
Confucianism, legalism, and then, of course, the Tianxia System.
Okay, well, I've at least heard of Confucianism.
You've heard of Confucianism.
I know it emphasizes, like, benevolent governance.
Yeah, it's all about morality.
Morality.
And international relations.
Okay.
This idea of a unified middle kingdom.
Right, which has clear implications for how they might view their role in the world.
Right.
Then we have legalism.
Legalism, which seems a lot more pragmatic.
More pragmatic, focused on power, law.
Yeah.
This idea that self-interest
shapes how states behave.
So kind of more realist.
More realist, in a sense, Sure. But it also suggests a need for rules and laws to regulate how states interact.
And then we have this Tianxia system.
Yes, and this is where things get really interesting.
Nothing about.
So ancient concept literally means all under heaven.
Okay.
It envisions this hierarchical world order with China at the center.
Okay. And this has been getting a lot of attention lately, both within China.
Yeah, a lot of debate.
Within China and internationally about this.
Okay, so we're going to
dig into that.
Dig into that. All right. So let's dig a little deeper into this whole debate over Chinese characteristics in IR theory.
Okay.
You mentioned there's this, generational divide with older scholars tending to be, more in favor of it.
Right.
So what's the reasoning there? Why do they? Well, for scholars who, came of age before China's opening up, this emphasis on Chinese characteristics makes a lot of sense to them. They see it as a natural progression, a way for China to assert its unique perspective on the world stage.
Okay.
Take Liang Shou, for example.
Okay.
He argues that all social science theories, including IR theories, are inevitably shaped by the specific context from which they emerge.
So he's basically saying it's only natural for Chinese IR theory to reflect China's unique history and culture.
Precisely. Yeah. He sees this not as a limitation, but as a strength.
Okay.
He believes that China, with its long and rich history, actually has valuable insights to offer IR theory, insights that may not be fully captured by Western-centric theories.
And he even suggests that China should strive for independence.
He does.
In this increasingly multipolar world.
That's a key point. That emphasis on independence really speaks to a desire to break free from what some see as, Western intellectual hegemony.
Right.
To establish their own voice on the global stage.
Okay.
And this perspective isn't limited to just Liang Shou.
Okay.
You see it with other scholars as well.
Yeah.
Like Li Shisheng, for instance.
Okay.
He argues that China needs its own IR theory to explain, the dramatic changes that have occurred in international politics and in China's foreign policy, specifically since the 1980s.
So is he saying China's experience is so unique that it needs new theoretical frameworks?
You think so?
Yes, to really understand it.
And he sees Marxism as a key part of that.
Okay.
He advocates for combining Marxist principles with, practical experience to develop a truly Chinese IR theory.
So it's not necessarily about rejecting Western theories.
No, it's more about...
It's about, synthesizing different intellectual traditions.
Exactly.
Including China's own...
their own philosophical heritage.
Yeah.
To create something that speaks to their circumstances.
So there's this push to, blend traditional Chinese thought.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
With Marxism.
Right.
To create something.
To forge something new. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can't talk about Chinese characteristics without talking about Yifeng.
Okay.
He's very direct about the need for IR theory that specifically serves China's national interests.
Okay.
He believes all social sciences are ultimately tools to serve particular interests.
So why not China?
Exactly. Why shouldn't China develop an IR theory that helps it achieve its goals on the world stage?
He even goes so far as to outline specific features that he thinks this theory should have.
He does. Maintaining national interests while also promoting world peace and development.
It's a
delicate balancing act.
It is. It is.
It really is. And it's something that you see at the heart of China's current foreign policy.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Yeah. How do you assert yourself? without,
provoking backlash.
Yeah, provoking backlash or conflict.
Okay, so we've heard the arguments from, those in favor of Chinese characteristics, but you mentioned that not everybody in China
not everyone
is on board with this.
Right, particularly younger scholars, those who have studied abroad.
Right.
They tend to have...
And they have some pretty strong critiques.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
They argue that this whole push for Chinese characteristics, it's often driven more by politics and ideology than by genuine academic inquiry.
Are they saying it's a way to legitimize
the
Communist Party's control?
That it's a way to, control...
over IR theory.
Make sure it aligns with the official narrative.
Yeah, so they're worried this focus on cultural specificity will hinder China's ability to actually engage with...
You're really engaged.
...the broader field of IR theory.
They want their work to be taken seriously.
Right, so they don't want to be seen as like...
Right, they don't want to be a niche field.
A niche field?
With limited relevance.
Yeah.
They argue that good theory
yeah.
should be universal in its application.
Right.
You should be able to explain phenomena
yeah.
across different contexts.
And if it becomes too focused.
Right. If Chinese IR theory just becomes about China,
yeah.
then it risks becoming irrelevant to the rest of the world.
This reminds me of what Wang Yusu was saying.
Yeah.
About you got to master Western theory first.
Got to learn the rules of the game.
Before you go and try
to change them.
Change them.
He's advocating for a more, I think, measured, gradual approach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really understand
how
existing theory
works first.
Yeah.
And he's not alone.
No. Many younger scholars share that sentiment.
So this whole debate, it goes beyond just academic theory.
It does, yeah.
This touches on how China
sees itself.
Sees itself in the world.
In the world, yeah.
What role it wants to play.
What role it wants to play in shaping global norms.
Yeah. It's
about intellectual independence, national pride,
power,
and ultimately power.
Yeah.
Who gets to define the terms of the debate?
Yeah.
Whose ideas are going to shape the future of global politics?
These are big questions.
They are big questions, and the answers are not clear-cut.
This is a debate that is very much...
It's ongoing, yeah.
Still in progress.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for our listener who's out there trying to make sense of China's actions in the world?
There's no monolithic Chinese view of international relations.
Okay.
There's a diverse range of perspectives, each influenced by, different intellectual traditions, different political agendas, generational experiences.
And nuance is key.
Nuance is key. Avoid those generalizations and simplistic explanations.
Don't paint with too broad a brush.
Exactly.
Okay.
Look beyond the headlines. Really delve into the complexities of these debates.
Because it's likely to shape their behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
For decades to come.
This is going to shape how China acts on the world stage.
Okay. So this has been helpful in unpacking these different perspectives.
Right. Okay.
But we've talked a lot about theory.
Right.
But how does all of this actually translate into policy?
That's the big question, right?
It is. I mean, it's one thing to develop a framework.
You can have all these ideas.
Yeah.
But how do you actually put them into practice?
Are there specific examples?
Yeah, that's what we'll explore.
Of how this is being used.
In the next part of our deep dive.
Okay. So we've spent a lot of time talking about, these different schools of thought that are shaping Chinese IR theory, everything from,
Marxism, Confucianism.
Marxism to Confucianism, legalism.
Yeah, even the Tianxia System.
That Tianxia System.
Yep.
But how does this actually, translate into policy?
Right. I mean, that's the key question.
Yeah. How do you take all these ideas?
Yeah, because theories are interesting.
Yeah.
But they have to be applicable.
They got to be useful.
To the real world.
And the research, kind of hints at some of these challenges.
It does.
That Chinese IR theory faces in actually influencing policy decision.
Yeah, it's not always a straight line.
There almost seems to be like this disconnect.
Yeah, there's often a gap, I think.
Between the academic world.
Between the academics who develop the theories.
And the policymakers.
And the people who are actually, on the front lines.
Right.
Of diplomacy and international relations.
Yeah, the academics might be having these...
They're having these deep theoretical debates.
Big ideas.
But policymakers are dealing with real-world, immediate issues.
Right, like...
trade negotiations, security threats.
These things that are happening right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They need practical solutions.
Not just these abstract concepts.
Right, they need something they can actually use.
One of the sources even suggested that, this focus on Chinese characteristics might actually make it harder.
It could, yeah.
For Chinese IR theory
to gain traction.
To be taken seriously.
Yeah, on the global stage.
On the global stage.
Yeah, because there's a risk that, this emphasis on Chineseness could be seen as too inward-looking.
Right. Like it's
serving, primarily Chinese interests.
Only for them.
And if the perception is that, Chinese IR theory is just a tool to justify their actions, then it loses credibility as a framework for understanding the world.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah, it is a bit.
If
you constantly emphasize how different you are, you risk being seen as outside the mainstream.
So then you're not part of the conversation.
Exactly. And that's a problem if, China wants to be seen as a thought leader.
Yeah.
A country that helped shape global norms and institutions.
You got to speak the same language.
You have to be able to communicate in a way
that
others understand, to engage in dialogue.
So are there any examples of Chinese IR theory, actually?
That's tough to say. It's hard
influencing policy
to point to really specific examples.
Yeah.
What about the Tianxia System?
Okay, yeah, what about that? I mean, is that just an academic idea?
It's a good question, yeah.
Or is it actually shaping how they're...
It's still being debated, I think, by scholars.
Yeah.
But...
There's no
smoking gun, right?
Clear evidence.
No clear evidence that it's being, directly translated into policy.
Yeah.
But some argue that it's definitely influencing how Chinese leaders think about the world.
Okay, so how
they frame their understanding of global order and China's place within it.
So it's a lens through which they...
it's more of a lens
that view these issues.
Yeah, and it could be subtly shaping their approach to, regional security, trade agreements, even their relationship with the U.S.
It's kind of wild to think that, this concept...
This ancient concept.
From so long ago.
Yeah.
Could be impacting...
It shows the power of ideas, right?
Yeah, it really does.
How they can continue to shape...
But there's also, potential pitfalls.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, it could be interpreted as like a justification for Chinese dominance.
It's easily interpreted that way.
Yeah. Instead of leading to...
So instead of creating a more harmonious world...
A more harmonious world.
Like Zhao Tingyang suggests...
Yeah.
It could actually fuel suspicion.
Yeah, more distrust.
Mistrust, conflict.
More tension, not less.
And this is a concern that a lot of people have raised.
Yeah, both.
Both within China and internationally.
Okay, so where does all of this leave our listener?
Right.
Someone who's out there.
I think the main takeaway...
Trying to understand China's role in the world.
Is that China is not just passively absorbing Western theories. They're actively rethinking them, developing their own frameworks.
They're coming up with their own ideas. Okay. So we need to pay attention to these.
We have to pay attention to these emerging perspectives.
Emerging perspectives.
Because they offer valuable insights, I think.
Yeah.
Into how China sees the world.
And how they might act.
Yeah, how they might approach things.
On the world stage.
And the other takeaway, I think, is that there's no single, Chinese approach to IR.
Right. It's not.
There's a lot of debate within China.
A monolith.
Different schools of thought, competing ideas.
Right.
So it's important to avoid those generalizations.
Nuance.
Nuance is key. Exactly.
And lastly, we need to keep in mind that the relationship between IR theory and policy in China, it's complicated.
It's messy.
Yeah.
It's often opaque.
Yeah.
Ideas might influence policy in subtle ways.
Yeah.
But it's rarely a direct translation.
It's not a straight line.
It's not a one-to-one.
From A to B.
Exactly. So it's a good reminder that, while China's becoming more powerful, their decision-making processes can still feel like a black box to outsiders.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has been interesting.
It's given me, a whole new way
framework
of looking at China.
Yeah, for understanding their actions.
And its ambitions on the world stage.
And hopefully it's given you, the listener, some food for thought.
Nothing to think about.
As well, because the development of Chinese IR theory is a story that's still unfolding.
Yeah.
It's a story that has the potential, I think, to really reshape the global order.
It's a story we all need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely.